If someone put a gun wrapped in a North Korean flag up to my head and told me to describe Homefront The Revolution in one sentence or less, I'd have to say that this game is deeply flawed, but interesting in concept. Let me explain. I could start by laying into all the crap stuff about this game, but I feel it suffers from revieweritis, which is where enough people have heard of Homefront and that it was a buggy mess on release and that it was bad, and if you liked the game your opinion was bad and you should feel bad. But all major bugs were patched for my playthrough, aside from two things I'll cover later on. Now, let's get to some good stuff. Combat. In the start of the game, you are introduced and placed in a red zone, one of the two different types of zones in this game. Yes, it's a zone control game. In the red zones, there are no civilians, and the North Koreans have been told to shoot on sight, as opposed to the yellow zones where there are civilians and the Koreans have been told to shoot you on sight, only if they see you not standing next to some innocent schmuck. So, if you're spotted, you have to hide or die. There is no third option. But in the introduction to combat, you are told that since the North Koreans vastly out-tech you, the Resistance and its motley crew use hit-and-run tactics to have a fighting chance, and the combat's design emphasizes this to a T. Your guns hit hard, and the animations are quite good. There's a real satisfaction to the way your character slaps on and off the top half of the AR-15's receiver for the modding system. And while yes, this system resembles the same one from Crysis, it is satisfying nonetheless. But while you have powerful weapons, the enemy has power too. You have little health, you run out of ammo in a fight very quickly, and the North Koreans will keep coming and coming and coming, all of which lend to this feeling of weakness and inferiority, but you still have a card up your sleeve. You might ask how you can still feel powerful when you die so quickly and there's a seemingly unending supply of North Korean soldiers to fight, but that is where the hit-and-run tactics come into play. Imagine this. You've been tasked with liberating a yellow Zone X. Zone X is heavily patrolled by North Koreans, and you have to use back alleys, abandoned buildings, and scaffolding to get around, undetected, until the populace have been sufficiently riled up by your actions to start attacking North Koreans, and therefore the North Koreans stop coming to that part of town on a regular basis because they're too scared. There is your power. People. And while the North Koreans will still chase you if you are spotted, they are obviously outnumbered, and this is where the upper hand comes from. You have no business fighting the North Koreans. They're better in every technical way, but you have the people and the city on your side. Speaking of the city of Philadelphia is a place I've never been to, so I can't make a comment on how accurate the representation is, but I mean, you're dealing with a game that is set in an alternate timeline where the North Koreans have invaded and it's the year 2029, how accurate could it be? But the makers of this game put such attention to detail and care into crafting something that is quite beautiful and seems like a real place with real history. The people walking around will have conversations and comment on your actions. When you pull out a gun, the NPCs will make a comment like, "Oh, I'm not getting involved in this resistance crap." But as you do things to liberate the zone, people will start to be bolder. And there's a very visual representation of this. The city will change. The people will start by breaking a window or two. Maybe you'll see some graffiti written on the walls that wasn't there before, or maybe you'll see someone actually writing that graffiti. And when you show them that they have the upper hand, they'll break cars, attack conspirators, accost North Koreans in the street, whereas before, they would run away if the soldiers even walked towards them. It's convincing, and it's also satisfying to see the city change in such palpable ways from your actions. I put character not to mean actual characters in the story of the game, and while there are a couple times that the characters are memorable, I'm not referring to that. What I mean by character is there seems to be a care and pride put into the game that I don't often see in AAA games. There's an overwhelming, at least for me, sense that everything was put here in the world and was placed by somebody who enjoyed their job and found pride in it. Why would they fix all of these issues and make 3 DLCs which improve upon every aspect of the game if they didn't care about this, especially after the reviews that it received? I can't say much about the story for fear of spoilers, but I'll say this. The idea of the North Koreans invading the US is sold much better in this game than the last, and the idea is actually quite cool. The story flips and flops sometimes, and there are a couple plot twists you can see from miles away, but I still enjoyed its 15 to 20 hour playthrough. It was fun, and I genuinely cared about the 3 main characters to a point. But I'm a sucker, so what do I know? But while we're on the subject of story, I have to get into the not-so-good parts now. And what I meant by the concept of the game being interesting is that the idea of the US being invaded and there being a second revolution is cool, but the very concept of North Korea invading the US in the way it is set up screams for North Korea to be replaced by China, and it breaks your suspension of disbelief in the first 5 minutes of the intro. Thankfully, it's a small annoyance, and the gameplay was solid enough to keep me hooked past this interesting setup. How the plot twists come are, like I said, telegraphed from 200 miles away, and why on earth is the player character silent? The reasons for having a silent character in a game is so that the player can more easily place themselves into the shoes of the character and not get drawn out by things that he might say, but I've found myself internally screaming for the protagonist Ethan Brady to say something, anything, at certain points in the game's story. Thankfully, this was fixed in the DLC and shows that, while I said before, the developers were actually listening to the couple of fans they had left, but that still doesn't fix the problems with the main campaign in my opinion. As for bugs, I experienced 2 major ones in my playthrough. One was a crash for no apparent reason that was fixed by me starting the game again and continuing on from there. The other might not be a bug, and it might be a side effect of the limited resources for the development of the game, but the sheer amount of bad mixing and audio glitches I had were immersion breaking, to say it in the kindest way I can. I'm an audio guy, so I might be a little bit more attuned to these things than the regular Joe, but it just wasn't great. I could always understand key plot moments. There was never any problems with that, but I had multiple times where someone would start talking on the radio, and then a character in the room would start talking over the person on the radio, and I wouldn't be able to understand either of them. Or if I was hiding from the guards, there would sometimes be a civilian standing near me that repeated the same 2 or 3 lines about, "Oh God, no, not me," mirroring my internal dialogue about how they should just shut up. And while I'm on the subject of hiding from the guards, I have to mention the stupid AI. It was bad. They know where you are as soon as one of the guards spots you. They will throw grenades at a dumpster you're hiding in, but won't check inside. They'll patrol right past your hiding spot for minutes on end, seeming to be stuck in a patrol loop, till finally they move on. It's very Alien Isolation-esque how you hide, but Alien did it better, mainly because it had competent AI. Speaking of ideas from other games, refreshed and rehashed ideas. Some of them are from Metro. There's a section of the city that has been gassed, and you'll find it about halfway through the game. You have to use a gas mask, but this is one of the best illustrations for my main point about the game. Metro did it better, and it serves Metro's gameplay and world perfectly. Here, it's just an annoyance, and sometimes you'll forget about it very easily because you can't break the gas mask, and you don't have to worry about the filters. It's just an overlay on your screen, and it seems to be another button press that you have to do just for the sake of it. There's also ideas from Far Cry, like the towers, and the liberating areas, and the looting, and the gunplay. They're all ripped right out of Far Cry, which isn't a bad thing. No Far Cry game has been set in a dense urban environment, and it's a good change, as it's interesting to see these systems be put to use in such a different environment, but Far Cry did the core gameplay loop better. And Crysis, like I mentioned before, the weapon modding system is straight out of Crysis. And actually, surprisingly, Homefront did it better. Like I said before whenever I was talking about combat, the animations for at least the weapon modding system have a heft to them, and the audio design for it is also quite good. Now, do all of these rehashed ideas make Homefront a bad game? Not inherently. Of course it doesn't. If taking influence from other games made your game bad, we wouldn't have Battlegrounds, which stole from H1Z1, which stole from DayZ, which stole from Arma. But in the end, Homefront The Revolution has glimmers of hope in its design and some genuinely good ideas, but it's just a budget Far Cry 3. I'd recommend it with all of the DLCs and the main game on sale to anyone who enjoys Far Cry and is intrigued by the different environment to play in, or anyone who likes to support developers who recognize their mistakes and attempt to fix them, but to everyone else, it's probably not worth it. Thank you all for watching this video and spending your time listening to me ramble on for a while. I'm fairly new to this whole script writing thing and I didn't quite follow it very well, but hopefully the finished product is entertaining and maybe a little bit educational. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any comments or feedback, leave them below and I will read every single one of them. Again, I thank you for watching. I'm GameSofter, and I'll catch you guys next time.